Ben, thank you so much. As we had spoken about before, I've been a big fan of your podcast for many, several months. Early 2020, kind of 2019, actually. I guess that's when I started listening. Primarily when I was walking to school. And yeah, I was just listening to your podcast, getting inspired. I have my own video production company. I think just one day I was looking up like video production podcast, and this was like one of the first one that came up. Listened to your show, and I've been a big fan ever since then. So I'm super happy. I'm going to use this interview as the start to season 3 of my own show, which is all about people who work in TV, film, and video. So I feel like you're a great guest to really kick it off, start that knocking out of the park. And I just want to let you now have a little bit of a space and time to talk about where you are in your own show, and kind of give my listeners a dive into how you got started in the world of video as a profession.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for having me on, Alex, and thanks for listening to my podcast too. It's awesome to know that you're out there and listening in. So a little bit about me. Look, I run a video production and video strategy agency here in Queensland, Australia, and have been for 12 years. Prior to that, I've been in various roles in video for most of my life. So, right from when I was a kid, my dad had, a big old VHS video camera that he stuck up on his shoulder, and the camera up on one shoulder and the recording device on the other shoulder, and then a battery kind of hanging off another on the other side. So, 3 components all stitched together. And I was fascinated by the whole idea of capturing video content and then editing video content as well. At that stage, we were playing around with tape to tape kind of editing, which was fun. But look, long story short, I then went through high school myself and was interested and fascinated in video production, and then ended up kind of falling into tertiary studies as a high school film and television teacher. So I was teaching for about 7 years, teaching film and media studies. And then I just stepped out and started my own business. I was inspired by some work that I did while traveling over in Ireland, working for a small video production company over there. And I was like, this looks like something I can do. So I took the plunge, left teaching behind, and started my business 12 years ago and haven't looked back.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting how for you there was that point, right, where you had all your experience and working with other people and taking that entrepreneurial leap essentially 12 years ago. What have you found to be one of the biggest challenges in growing as a business owner yourself? Like what's been one of the biggest challenges that you faced as in the entrepreneurial journey, and how have you been able to overcome that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and there's no easy answer. I think that in business, it's a case of kind of next level, next devil, right? So in the early stages, just about like, well, how do I do everything? Where do I find clients? How do I even work with and talk to clients? And at that stage, it's still learning, much of the craft as well of video production. You're kind of doing everything at the early stage. You're every single role within your organization if you're starting out as kind of a one-man band. And then, next level, next devil, it's kind of like, okay, so now I'm busy. I've got lots of work to do. So now it's like, well, how do I hire people? How do I bring on someone to help me? And that's a real challenge, particularly in the beginning. To go from 1 to 2 is hard, right? So, you can do, there's a number of ways to do that to kind of ease into it. You don't need to necessarily hire full time straight off the bat, but, and then again, you go next level, next devil is like, okay, so now we've got a bit of a team going on. How do we manage that? And how do we continue to grow to support, paying the wages of that team? So then it becomes kind of a scale problem, and then I think it just goes from there. So I don't know if you want to kind of dig into anything specific, but I think that there are different challenges along that journey. And I think anyone who's kind of gone through this entrepreneurial starting a business journey, you take one challenge at a time, and then there's another challenge in front of you. That's just how it works, I think.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact guest, but it was when a few weeks ago I was listening to one of your older episodes, and it was a gentleman from the UK who he had like 35 employees, and he was talking about like the struggles of managing the team and fluctuating between that. And it's something that, so like the analogy you just gave, right? Like I like that next level. Like I would say I'm entering that second level. And it's something, I think it's been one of my biggest realizations this year, is that the best way to scale is to just bring more people on. And like you said, like there's ways to ease into that, contract other interns. I know in Canada, there's a lot of government grants, thankfully, that can help with that transition. And so talk to me about the team that you have with Engage Video Marketing. Like how many people work with you, and at what point did you realize, okay, I needed to actually, like, I need to bring somebody on to help me here?
So we've had different levels of team over the years. So I've had up to 6 people at one time, myself and 5 others. So we've always been a small company, never been at the scale of, I think you're referring to my guest, Tim Jarvis from the UK, who scaled the company over a number of years to like 35. I mean, I've never dealt with that, and I don't know if I want to. But, so we've had between, 5 and 6, but currently we're sitting at 3 full-time team, and we have some offshore, a virtual assistant as well, based in the Philippines. So there's 4 of us that we're working with now, and we're currently looking to recruit another. But look, that's kind of a sweet spot at the moment. To your other part of the question there around the first hire, so getting started, going from 1 to 2. At the time, we were focused on doing primarily wedding videos was the core of what we were doing. So it's simply a matter of hiring a second shooter, hiring someone to come out and shoot with me on those wedding days. And then very quickly I transitioned her and trained her into doing most of the editing as well. That's the time suck, right? In video production specifically, if you're just bogged down day in, day out, just editing the work that you produce, then you can't be focused on the bigger picture of growing stuff and attracting new clients and looking for new work. So that's really where I started. And at the time it was just an hourly rate. So casual employee, as it's referred to here in Australia, which means just paying them for the hours that they work at an agreed hourly rate. They submit an invoice and you pay them. So they're not an employee as such. So that's where we started. And after a while and successfully working with that particular contractor in that way, then she did become a part-time employee, which is just different from a kind of legal setup and tax implications and so on. But that's where we started. So it eased into it. If it didn't work out, I wasn't committed to anything.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think that's valuable, right? Like starting with, say, the editor, because it's definitely a time suck. And it's something that a friend of yours, Dan, he talks about as well on his show. And that's like avoiding those, say, like the pitfalls, the roller coaster, essentially, right? Like where you invest all your time in one client or 2 clients, whatever, and things are going great. And then, those projects are done, but you don't have anyone in the pipeline, right? So having an effective sales system is so, so important, and not even just video, but in all businesses. So kind of walk me through a bit of your sales process now. Like, how does that work for you for lead generation? Are you bringing on new clients, or do you find that you're doing like a lot of retainer or working with pre-existing clients, just you've built those relationships?
Yeah, so it's a real mix for us. But definitely, as a marketing strategist, that's the core of what we do, focused on video. I strongly believe, particularly, any business should be using video as part of their marketing and their lead acquisition and their sales process. And I believe that where I see a real gap, particularly with video producers, I'm not sure if this is the case for you, Alex, but we are pretty bad at kind of eating our own cooking or drinking our own Kool-Aid, or whatever the phrase is. It's the idea that we have the skills and abilities to market other businesses using video, but we're terrible at doing that ourselves. Mm-hmm. That's something that I realized in our own business a couple of years ago, and made a very concerted effort to actually start integrating more of what we do into how we market ourselves. So, a big part of what we do is content creation, is sharing valuable content with the marketplace, with our ideal prospects, using video content to educate, inform, and inspire people, to educate them around the power of video marketing for their business. And doing that through content, so doing that through videos is one way. Another way that works particularly well for us and is something that we're intending to ramp up more this year as well is actually, I call it leading with value. So I have this kind of motto around in marketing and business, if you can lead with value, then you're more likely to get people coming back and wanting to do business with you. So what that looks like for us is just educating our community, our business community, running workshops to share information about video marketing best practice. We do that in many cases with people in a room. So face-to-face with a group of people who are our ideal prospects, educate them around video marketing and then offer an opportunity to go further with us. It's not a sales pitch. It's just do you want a chance to kind of talk further about how this applies for your business? Then let's meet. And then the sales can take place. So as far as generating leads, particularly I think for a service-based business like a video production company or any service-based business, I think that if you can put your people, your expertise, your knowledge out there, provide value, lead with value, so that people feel informed or inspired or educated about the issues that they are facing and they know that you're the right person to help them, then that's, I think, the most powerful form of marketing. And obviously video is pretty powerful in that process, but it's about human connection as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. And so it inspires me to bring this up. And it's something that I love that you do. And it's something I've really tried to embody a lot in the work that I do now. And every call, every client, it's something you always remind about in your podcast, which is don't create video for video's sake. Like, have a strategy, right? It's so important. And yet we see so much video for video's sake. So for people who are not familiar with this idea of yours, or just like this idea in general, can you kind of like walk through that, what you mean by that idea?
So, I mean, exactly what you're saying there is so many people, whether it be businesses or people in business, people who are interacting in digital channels are seeing the prevalence of video content. And what they do is they think, well, we need to be part of that conversation. So we need to be doing video. And the thing is that as the ability to produce and publish video has become democratized or in the hands of anyone with a smartphone or a laptop, you don't need necessarily a video producer to make videos these days, right? Particularly for simple videos, social media videos, you can use a free tool on the web to create a pretty cool looking piece of video content. So that's the democratization. It's in the hands of everyone, which means that everyone can create video and not everyone, many people are creating video, but they're not creating video strategically or with a clear purpose. So it results in noise, and I think anyone who engages on digital platforms recognizes how much noise there is and how much video without a purpose there is, or content in general without a purpose. So it just becomes like more noise that you just filter out as a consumer. And that's not good marketing. That's not good business. So that's why I kind of talk about the idea of stop doing video for video's sake. With some simple strategic thought process before you create a piece of content, video or otherwise, you can make sure that you're producing the right video for the right purpose and using it in the right way. And that's the power of a strategic approach. And that's what we do in our business. That's what we try and practice in our own marketing. And that's what I obviously talk about a lot in my podcast and in the content I create.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so good. So I feel like if there's anything people take away from this, it's right. Create strategic video. It's so important. So I know I know you have like the 7 steps and everything's like that. And I just want people to go and explore your own content. But one thing that I want to talk about as well with you is your online blueprint strategy. And so correct me if I don't have like the full name right, but yeah, your online course essentially that people can take, and they have, well, just talk to me about what that course is and kind of when you started that and how that whole idea kind of came to you.
Sure. So the online video strategy blueprint is basically a result of the work that we had done within my own business, kind of working out what video strategy looks like and creating frameworks around that. so that effectively in the early stages, it was so that I could kind of share these ideas with my team so that they understood what I was doing and why. And then it also became a framework to actually kind of work with our clients and say, well, this is why we're making these choices with your video strategy and why we recommend you do this. So it's kind of building out a system and a framework around what video marketing strategy looks like for business. And then specifically the course came about as speaking to other video producers in my network who wanted to figure this stuff out for themselves. They're like, we don't understand video marketing. We don't understand digital marketing as it applies to video production, but we need to. So that kind of prompted me to build out a program and offer it to other video producers now around the world. So the course is designed to basically take a video producer, someone who associates as someone who's making videos for other people, particularly, and teaches them around how to use video strategy in their video production business to get better results for their clients and grow their clients' businesses and their business. So that's the core of it. How it came about was about 4 years ago. Basically, it was that framework that I developed, and then I just started teaching it very loosely to some small groups of people, and then it just grew from there. And now it's obviously a full program, a full course of learning. So yeah, now over 115 video producers worldwide have been through that program.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. That's
thank you.
I'm happy to hear that. That's sweet. And so, yeah, it's something that's integral, I know, and that's why, it's very it's spoken about on the podcast. And so, I'm curious. One thing that I do appreciate about your podcast is that you are very transparent. Like I believe it was episode 150 or the like, where you kind of broke down how you got to the first million, I believe, in revenue. And you're very open about that, and that's something that's kind of a taboo subject. And so I want to ask, I guess, on this, what has given you the motivation to keep going with your podcast? Like, have you ever had any doubts, anything like this, even, and not even just the podcast, the business? Like, where do you find your inner motivation to always be pushing forward?
Yeah, look, that's a really good question. And it comes down to who and why you're doing anything, right? Well, why are you in business? Why are you creating content? Why are you putting effort into publishing a podcast? I think that all those questions come back to the same sort of responses. You start out doing it for yourself, and then you get motivated and driven to keep doing it for others, right? For the people that you're impacting. And that's the same for all of it. So, I think about business. Why did I start business? Well, I started at the beginning because I wanted to have my own job. I wanted to control my hours. I wanted to, decide what I wanted to do in my career and my work,
Totally.
and have that control, right? So you do that for yourself. And then what keeps you going is then it's for others, right? Whether it be for your staff, your team, your employees, kind of keep them in work as well. Or for your clients. And, what motivates me in the work we do is the success we can get for our clients, or the results we can get for our clients, and the relationships I've built with our clients. That keeps me going in business. And I think if to go back to your original question around starting a podcast and putting value out in the podcast, and openness and transparency and authenticity and the value in the podcast, it comes back to that idea of I started it for me as a fun thing, right? I wanted to just put some content out into the world, and the podcast seemed easier than doing weekly videos at the time, to do a weekly audio podcast. And I also selfishly wanted to have an opportunity to get in front of interesting guests, to have conversations with people that I wanted to have conversations with, and start that. And then, to me, to be honest, it was like probably 60, 70 episodes in before I really started to just get random people coming back to me saying, I've been listening to your podcast for ages, or thank you so much for that. Or, meeting people at, a physical conference on the other side of the world who came up to me and recognized me from an audio podcast, but they, had seen my face through various things. And they were like, Ben, I love your podcast. And I'm like, And that, I mean, that didn't happen a lot, but it only didn't need to happen a lot.
Yeah.
It was just enough for me to go, there are people listening and they're getting value from it and they're appreciating it. And if there's one or two people who are actually taking the time to reach out, there's 100 others who aren't doing that. So yeah, I think that's what motivates me to keep going. And now that happens more and more and again and again. And like this connecting with you today, Alex, is the same sort of thing.
Yeah, no, there's a few things there. So like one of my guests I had, her name's Anissa. She's in the UK. She's she's an Indian British actress. And we talked about that. She has her own podcast called Unplugged with Annie. And we talked about the transition from being having a podcast and going from doing it for selfish reasons to selfless reasons, where, it becomes less about the conversations and the value that I want to get from my guests, but the audience grows and everything grows. And that, it's more now just giving back, right? Providing that inbound value to the audience. And then the other thing that it made me think of, it's another guest I had, his name's Avery. He has a similar podcast. You actually both started at the same time. I remember when you hit 150, he had also just hit 150. And he talked about the impact that a podcast can have. And, I had asked him, do you ever get discouraged sometimes, and he's like, yeah, but I don't worry too much about the numbers. Not worry, but I now I don't look for the ratings and the downloads. I look for who it has an impact on. The messages that I get that say, thank you for this, thank you so much. And it was funny, the day after I had that interview, I got a message from somebody on LinkedIn being like, hey man, just want to say, I don't know this person, total stranger, but they said, I'm listening to your podcast and it really helps me focus and it really helps me with my own creativity. And I was like, that's, literally it was just so serendipitous that I had just had that conversation with someone. And so kind of shift gears a bit here. But yeah, thank you for that answer. I thought that was a really, really nice answer. Something that, I'm part of, and I see it and I don't do it myself, but it's email marketing. So I'm on your email list, and I think, you have a good email strategy, and a lot of other podcasts I follow have a similar approach. What's been one of your key successes to grow your email list?
Yeah, I mean, you could probably go into a whole episode around email list growth and strategies around that, but probably the key thing that's worked for us is just, again, back to that idea of leading with value. And it's a pretty common technique around putting something of value out there for free in return for an email address, right? But you need to know your audience, right? That's where good marketing starts, is knowing who it is that you want to serve and what pain are they feeling, what's going through their heads in their business or their life that you can show up and help them with, something that will provide a small win. So I've got ebooks that are my key lead magnets to, basically encourage people to join my email list. I've done, free trainings. There's a number of ways that have been successful in growing the email list. And also getting in front of other people's audiences as well. So, the idea of just being on other people's podcasts or, guesting interviews on other people's YouTube channels or collaborations like that is a great way to actually be exposed to other people's audiences and therefore grow your list. But if you don't have a way that someone can join your email list that's appealing to them, then they're not going to do it. So one of the biggest mistakes I see businesses make, just not necessarily content creators or personal brand businesses, but normal businesses, I don't know if that's the right word, but, is just having a join our newsletter kind of a form. And I guess that's better than having nothing, but no one wants to join another newsletter or subscribe to another business's newsletter. That might have worked 10 years ago, but it doesn't anymore. So you need to think about what can you offer of value in return for that email address.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point, actually. And it's something that I have and haven't put too much effort, and honestly should have. But I've created an ebook with tips about video. But yeah, no, I think that's awesome. Awesome advice. So just a few more questions here. I want to kind of come back to I want to come back to your podcast a bit, because that's, that's kind of the my main key points. And say, at what point did you really start to see, your podcast grow? And you kind of mentioned it. And I know you've mentioned it in another podcast, where it's like episode 50 to 70, where you actually like rebranded the podcast and you really focused in on the niche of video. Did you find that really you started to see exponential growth? Like, are you still seeing growth? Like, what is your growth journey in a podcaster? Because to put things into perspective, you are going to be episode 40 for me. So the podcast, like my podcast, is still, so to speak, in its infancy. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I'm just curious for your own experience in the medium. How was that growth cycle for you?
Yeah, in my experience of working and talking to other podcasters as well, the journey can be very different. So I can only talk to my journey. And exactly as you say there, like the first 50 episodes, I think I was floundering around a bit more, still saw some download numbers that I was happy with, and had people reaching out to me saying, I listen to your podcast and thank you. But at the time, the first 50 episodes, my podcast was called Engage with Story. It was focused on storytelling as an art form, as a business tool, which aligned with video loosely, but it was something that I was just more personally interested in exploring. But from episode 50, I realized that I need to align this podcast to my business goals. I need to have more direct connection with, things that I want to talk about, things that I eventually want to sell. At the time of starting the podcast, I didn't really have the course as an offer. I didn't have that as some other kind of monetization options around it. So to make a podcast worthwhile from a business sense, unless it's purely passion, is you need to align it with what you're wanting to actually achieve in your business, right? So, and the audience you want to build that's going to bring value to your business. So transitioning to the Engage Video Marketing podcast, which directly aligned with the brand name Engage Video Marketing, it just made a lot of sense. And from there, I got renewed focus on the kinds of guests I wanted to get on, the audience that I wanted to attract. And that did see that kind of rapid change in trajectory for the podcast. When I say rapid, I mean, it's not like kind of hockey stick kind of curve, maybe some podcasts do that, but mine's just been a steady growth from nearly 200 episodes now. There's some ups and downs. You look at the download stats and there's some peaks and troughs based on who the guests are. Certain guests will attract more downloads, particularly if the guest shares it out to their larger audience as well. So you do see ups and downs, but I'm looking at that kind of underlying growth. So what is that initial, 48, 72 hours download number for every episode kind of averaging at? And that to me indicates the number of people who are regular listeners, and that's what I focus on more than the kind of ups and downs. So that's the way I kind of look at it. I think that podcast is definitely a long game. You need to do it more for yourself than for any kind of vanity metrics or statistics to start with. Totally. But, I think that in certain niches and certain topics, you may be able to create a podcast that kind of explodes. And mine hasn't done that, but you could. And, I've seen that happen for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, I appreciate it. And again, I want to acknowledge just the fact that you are transparent and, we can have this conversation. It's super interesting to hear that it is, it's been a steady growth. And, even me, right, like seeing a steady growth to my podcast and the value of having guest share and things like that. So kind of final few questions here. And again, thank you so much for your time. If people want to connect with you, if they want to listen to your show, if they want to follow you on social, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you, Ben?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, the podcast is a great way to find out more about what I share and what I talk about and the great guests that I bring on. So that's the Engage Video Marketing podcast. You can find that on everywhere podcasts are found. And yeah, I mean, probably Instagram at engage_Ben is a great way to find me as well. Or just search for Engage Video Marketing and you'll find me on various platforms. LinkedIn's a good one. Connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I don't
I
even
think that's where you connected with me, was it, Alex? I can't remember.
No, just email.
Just email. Okay.
Yeah, I don't even think we've connected on LinkedIn. I'll
We'll
take
have
that.
to do that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I hope to stay connected with you for time to come, and hopefully someday get out to Australia. Yeah. So, but again, I'll dive into the next question. Is there anything that we haven't spoken about yet that you wanted to chat, or is there any upcoming, service, a product? I know you recently launched a Facebook group. Maybe let's give that some airtime just to chat about that. Just kind of a space if there was anything that you had in mind that you wanted to chat about. I always like to add this at the end of podcast episodes.
Sure. Yeah. If anyone listening kind of is in the world we're in of video production, or interested in learning more about video marketing, video strategy, then the free Facebook group is the Video Strategists Community. You should be able to search for that and just request to join, fill out a couple of questions, and I'll let you in. So that's a good place to go. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, nothing specific that I'm promoting right now. Like, I'm about leading with value and just putting some content out into the world. So join the podcast, listen to the podcast, join the Facebook group and get involved there. And yeah, it'd be awesome to connect with anyone who listens to the show.
Amazing. And so my last question here for you, Ben, what does creativity mean to you?
Oh, that's a curveball. You're throwing that one at me. So
Yeah.
I think creativity is about just taking deliberate action on something that fires you up. I think that's where the best form of creativity comes from, is not just kind of made up in the moment, but deliberate action on something that you're passionate and fires you up is where you can be most creative. So yeah, that's a bit deep.
Love it. No, amazing. Thank you so much again. I just want to acknowledge all the great work you're doing, all the people you're inspiring in our industry in video content. Me especially, it's been awesome. I just want to give you a final cheers to that. Yeah, it's been great actually getting to chat with you, and hopefully, maybe I'll come on your podcast in the future, and I'd love to have you back on at some point again. Yeah. So thanks again, man. I really appreciate it.
Good on you, Alex. It was fun. Good. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers.